Hey, it's Adam and Carissa.
Are you stuck in a high drive, low drive situation where maybe you desire sexual intimacy more than your spouse or vice versa? Then this is for you.
So we want to cover 3 topics, really. The first one is for the high drive partner. We have some questions for you to consider, to think about. And then for the low drive partner, we have some tips for you. And then lastly, some practical advice, some tips. When the answer is no for that day, how can you guys both end with a yes? How can you both get your needs met? So that's what we want to cover.
Stay tuned. So first, to the higher drive partner. Ask yourself, when you hear a yes or a no, what do you make that mean? So I'll give you an example. I had a client just this week, and she's the higher drive partner. And she said, okay, so I need to figure out what I make this mean. Okay, and she's writing it down in her journal because I had her write it down. And she says, so when I'm rejected, what do I make that mean? And I said, well, I know what you make a no mean. You make it mean rejection. That's not what he necessarily is doing or saying. Yeah. He may not mean, I reject you. Mm-hmm. So ask yourself, what are you making that no mean? Because that could impact your mood, and it's certainly not going to lead to you guys engaging in sexual intimacy if your mood is that of a rejected person. And then even a yes, what do you make that yes mean? Do you take it personally? Mm-hmm. So often we find that the higher drive partner takes both the yes or the no personally. Right. And so they make it mean something about themselves. They tie it to their identity, right, that they're enough or not enough. And that may not be the case at all coming from your partner.
Right, because when we extend invitation to be intimate, it's easy to take it we're like, I was rejected. Mm-hmm. So they take it as a rejection, but really they could be doing it for their own needs. Like, yeah, I am not in the right place right now, or whatever that is, but they take it as something about them, where it's like a critical aspect about them, right, that they feel rejected or attacked. Yeah. So look deeply at what exactly do you make that mean? Mm-hmm. The way you interpret the situation. A lot of people see it as rejection. A lot of people see it as just the wife isn't in the mood, or the husband isn't in the mood. And generally, we'll probably talk about he and she a lot here. Generally, and these are just generalities, the male has a higher drive overall, and the women has a less drive. Now, the roles are reversed sometimes, but that's generally how it is.
And really, different statistics will say different things, but they say it's about an 80-20, right? So yeah, the majority of males are going to be higher drive than their wives. But think about that. 20% of females do have a higher drive than their husband. So if you're at a party and there's a bunch of people at the party, 1 in every 5 of those women probably have a higher drive than their husband. Mm-hmm. So you're not alone if you're the woman who has a higher drive. Right. Don't think that you're an alien or you're abnormal. Right. It's very normal to have a higher drive. 1 in every 5 women do. So we just want to normalize that for you too.
Yes. The next question that we want you to consider is why? Why do you want sex? Yeah. Sometimes we have a need, we have an emotional need, and we seek to get that need filled through sex. But is that the only way that need can be met? Right. And what's causing that need, right? So some people, they want sex because they want to numb a feeling, right? Mm-hmm. They don't want to feel something, or they're shielding their brain from feeling whatever they are feeling. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it could be, help me out. What's another thing?
So, loss is a big one. Yeah. I had a client who experienced a loss in his life, a significant loss of a family member. And the way he coped with that was by trying to seek connection, right? Which is great. That's a healthy coping skill, to connect with other people. Mm-hmm. But that turned into sexual connection with his wife, and it was on overdrive. Mm-hmm. And now it can have the opposite effect for some people. When they experience a loss, they can go into not wanting to have sex, and they're trying to isolate. But for him, it was just this loss, and the way he grieved with that was to seek connection, and it was only sexual intimacy that would fulfill that for him, until he re-examined it and went, I can connect in different ways with my wife or with others, and it doesn't have to be sexual. Mm-hmm. And so really examine, why are you wanting sex? Mm-hmm. Is it to fulfill a need that can be met in other ways?
Right, like safety.
Yeah, safety is a big
some
one.
people have had stuff happen in their life,
Yeah.
and the way they feel that they can kind of claim their spouse or whatever, like, and feel safe, feel secure, is through that.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not exactly just purely physical desire,
Right.
or love or whatever. It's other things. So what we'd want you to examine is what exactly is the thing that's propelling you,
Yeah.
or what's the thing that's pushing you for more intimacy.
You mentioned safety. It reminded me of the idea of feeling abandoned. So if people have abandonment issues,
Yeah,
if
trauma.
a father or mother left them when they were young or passed away when they were young, that trauma can make them feel insecure in their current relationship. And one way that they know they're secure is when they have sex. So they seek out sex simply to feel secure in their relationship.
Very common.
So we're not saying that any of these things are always wrong. It's okay to feel comforted or secure with your spouse through sexual intimacy.
And can I say, those needs will change over time, right?
Sure.
So sometimes you will need to feel close, and sometimes you will feel so. You're not always going to have the same sort of emotion or mindset going into sex,
Right.
Or when you're asking for it.
Yeah.
But just to be aware.
And especially if you're the higher drive person, because we're speaking to you right now, be aware of the needs that you have and the variety of ways to get those needs met, not just through sexual intimacy. So for instance, if your need is to cope with a loss and you need to feel comforted, call a friend. Go out to coffee with a friend. Journal about it if it's the middle of the night. Pray about it. Listen to some music and just sit and reflect and cry even. Crying can be so helpful for you to release that cortisol and the stress hormones that you have related to it. So do something else if your spouse isn't up for sex at that moment to make sure that you get your need met.
Right. And the last thing is, the question we'd want you to consider is, what does sex mean for you?
Yeah.
And this really connected to the other stuff we're having you think about. So maybe pull out a piece of paper, pull out a notebook, and actually journal some of these questions. What does it mean to you? What's going on? You'll be surprised what comes out on paper. What that is not quite apparent right on the surface when you're just thinking about it. But when you're writing it down and interacting with the ideas and thoughts and emotions, stuff will come out.
Totally.
So we'd encourage you, just take some time, have some you time, get some coffee, and sit down and write some stuff out.
So in addition to the questions to ask yourself, a few considerations or tips for you if you're the higher drive person. Respect the prerequisites of your lower drive spouse. Okay? Sometimes you can think of them as excuses. So for instance, if your spouse says, I really have to make sure that the kids are asleep. They might be playing a game in the living room and the higher drive partner is like, let's go have sex.
Who cares?
Right? And maybe the lower drive partner says, no, like a prerequisite for me is they have to be asleep or, with a sitter or whatever. Respect the prerequisites of the lower drive partner. It might even be a time of day thing. Like maybe, if you're the man and you're the higher drive partner and you want to have sex in the morning, that's probably because your testosterone peaks at that time. But guess what? Your wife's testosterone peaks in the evening. And so for men, it's between 7 and 8 a.m. And then for women, it's in the evening sometime. So if you're the higher drive partner and you're going to be ready to go anytime, then respect the wife's prerequisite of evening time.
Right. And you said wife there?
Yeah.
And that's really good because women generally need to get into the place, like go to a place in order for her to release and be able to focus on that,
Yeah.
Because generally what they're doing is they're thinking about everything else and caretaking.
Yeah.
And sexual intimacy is the one place where she can't be caretaking, or it just won't be a good experience, or you will never get there.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say, just pitch in.
Yeah.
If she has a lot of stuff to do and you're waiting, you might just take the time and say, hey, let me help you.
Yeah.
And that will lead to her feeling good about you and good
and
about
her
the situation.
Feeling relieved of her duties too and responsibilities, and that you're sharing that load. You're a team, and so she can recognize her own needs, namely sexual intimacy with you, right? So keep that in mind. We have a whole video called "Getting Her in the Mood,"
Yeah.
so you could watch that.
It's good one.
And then other prerequisites like, making sure that you're showered, or maybe she wants you to have cologne on, or he wants you to have perfume on, or wear something in particular. But make sure that you're paying attention to your lower drive partner's prerequisites. That's really important.
Yes.
Also, to the higher drive partner who's a woman, oftentimes if the woman's the higher drive partner and the man seems to just shut himself off emotionally or sexually to her, it can be because she's nagging. So not just about sex, but about other things. Because what happens is she becomes the caretaker. She becomes kind of in the mothering role. And there's nothing that's a turn on about it if you're in a mothering role. If you're telling your husband what to do, how to do it, and you're mothering him and nagging him, that's not a turn on. He's not going to want to go have sex. So kind of move away from the nagging and use assertive language to ask for what you want or need.
And this is where we'll tag in for, this works for both, right? So sometimes dropping hints aren't very good because they're ambiguous.
Yeah.
And you're expecting someone else to just pick up on it, and then you get frustrated if they don't, and then you make it mean something, and so it just becomes really convoluted.
So don't be passive aggressive.
Right, don't be passive aggressive. And also, like she was saying, ask for what you want in clear language. I wish that you would, or whatever, blank, or I wish that we could blank. And if that happened, I would feel loved, accepted, whatever the emotion word is. So ask clearly for what you want. It's really going to help you guys, because communication really is the foundation of intimacy. So
yeah,
there you go. So now we're going to switch gears and talk to the lower drive partner. So here are some questions that we want you to think about, to introspect about. First, when you're asked for sex and then you feel like it's a no, is it really that you just want less sex, or is it that when you're asked, the stage isn't quite set for you to interact or to go into that place? Because often it almost takes some time to get used to the idea, to get there, and sometimes there hasn't been enough leaning in, or the term we use for being attentive, being mindful,
feeling connected,
right?
Because sometimes it's less about, oh, I don't want to have sexual intercourse with you right now, and it's more about, I'm not feeling connected to you right now.
Right.
And that can go for the man or the woman. Typically, we do see 80% of the time it's the woman who just isn't feeling connected to her husband, and therefore doesn't want to have sex with him.
So a lot of times the guy can go from 0 to 100, 100 being sex or intercourse, right? And the woman kind of has to step her way there. And so you can't skip the steps. For a guy, probably. But for a girl, there needs to be more foreplay. There needs to be more interaction and connection.
And you said foreplay, but don't take that word to mean what it traditionally means, because it could also just mean connecting in this way, okay? Today I said, babe, where's the Windex? Do we have Windex? And I'm looking under cabinets for Windex. And he goes, I'm not sure, but I know there's cleaner under the bathroom cabinet. I can grab it. That is connecting, rather than going, I don't know. I have no clue, right? So that's leaning in, it's connecting. And if you can connect with your spouse, who's the lower drive partner, or I guess we're talking to the lower drive partner, but if you can let your spouse know what you need from them in terms of feeling connected, they might realize, oh my goodness, that's not a hard task. I can definitely, offer to go grab the Windex, or, just tune in a little bit more, and that's going to help you feel connected and in the mood.
The next question that we want you to consider, or thing we want you to consider, is what type of sex do you want? Realizing, too, that sex is a continuum. Is it that you just don't want sex, or is it that you just want something more? If you guys have gotten routine and done it for the same way for the last 20 years or 10 years or whatever, and it starts becoming boring, you may not look forward to it. It just may not be something that you're into. So maybe some things, there needs to be more forethought, and we could give you a lot of examples, but this is beyond the scope of this video. So giving it just more thought. Something I suggested recently to a client was, it might be fun if, she plans the night, right? And then I plan the night the next week, and then she plans the night. So neither one are just kind of expecting the other to like pull something crazy out of the hat.
Right.
We could say, do something different, plan something a little extra.
Yeah.
And then I plan something a little
and
extra.
And planning can be as simple as, making sure the bed's made, turning on some music and having some massage oil out, leaving a note. It doesn't have to be grand. It could just be something simple. But it shows that there's forethought there.
Yeah. Something simple is just changing the music. If you always listen to jazz, play something else. It's amazing. Just little tiny changes can make a big change.
Yeah, tune into the 5 senses.
Yeah.
So whether, we're talking about music, but it can be something that you hear, it can be something that you taste, it can be something that you smell, it can be something that you see, or something that you touch. So tune into the 5 senses and just tweak it a little bit in one of those 5 sense areas.
For men that have the lower sex drive, sometimes it's the appearance of disinterest rather than a total lack of interest.
Right.
And this can be for a variety of reasons. The first one that comes to mind is erectile dysfunction or something that's related to that. So if I keep having a bad experience, then maybe I'm going to start avoiding it. I don't want to kind of keep on bathing myself in this terrible experience.
Right.
Or this frustrating when I feel less than a man if this happens.
So if you're experiencing erectile dysfunction, it's really important to check in with your primary care, and then they can give you a referral, because they might be able to find out what that's all about. It could be a medical issue. So you really want to make sure and get screened for something that could be a medical issue. If it's not a medical issue, talk with a therapist about that. A counselor or therapist might be able to help you tune in to what's happening in terms of performance issues, or what you're making it to mean in the bedroom that's making you have erectile dysfunction.
Yeah. And sometimes men get way too much in their head too, like, if this is going to happen, I don't know. And then something happens, right? So one way is the women just to say, hey, it's okay. We're fine. We're just going to have fun.
Yep.
And just kind of let it, it doesn't have to end a certain way in order for us to have a good time.
Exactly.
And that normally will really help the situation.
It takes the pressure off the performance. You don't want it to be about performance. You want it to be about connection. And so if you can connect with your spouse and enjoy your spouse, have a good time with your spouse, and it not be focused on the end results, it might just happen anyway. So really take the pressure off of the performance. So another reason that we see men having a lower sex drive, and really this could go for men or women, but is the use of pornography. If men are using pornography, or women, their ability to connect with their spouse in a way that's human and interactive and real and loving is going to be very diminished. Because they've trained their brain to respond to an object, to respond to a screen. And in those circumstances, they're blown out of proportion, right? So this is real life, but what they've seen is kind of almost a fairy tale, like blown out of proportion. Right. So that is a very big reason for a lot of erectile dysfunction and problems in the bedroom. Yeah. So, and even just the anxiety around it. We've seen this time and time again in session when a man will have trouble performing or connecting with his wife because he's anxious about the idea that he might not be able to perform because he's already viewed pornography that day. Aside from the spiritual reasons that you wouldn't want to dabble in pornography, there are so many medical and emotional reasons not to dabble in pornography. There's a whole book called Your Brain on Porn, and it's very revealing as to what pornography can do in your brain that would hinder your relationship.
Right. We have a whole series on that, so check out those videos if you haven't already.
Yes. It'll be really good for you to recognize, especially if you're the lower drive partner, why it might be hindering. So another reason that we see people kind of dipping into less frequent sexual intimacy or becoming the lower drive partner is due to the loss of couple time. And a lot of times that's due to parenting. So new parents experience that. And sometimes even people who have been parents for a long time, but they start throwing themselves into their family and their children because they're secure in their relationship. So that perceived security can actually make them pull away from the bedroom because
Right.
I have my wife hooked, I have my husband hooked.
Right.
So,
And because also after a lot of time not connecting, there seems to be a lack of connection, right? A lack of emotional safety or connection.
yeah.
So after a long time of that, yeah, it's going to start affecting you in the bedroom.
Yeah, and especially if it's, like you said, this lack of emotional connection, but they know that they're obliged to each other because their values say that they're not going to get divorced, right? So it's that security, and I said perceived security earlier because even though it might be secure on paper and you might never divorce, it's really not secure emotionally. So don't let that perceived security, just due to your values of not divorcing, lead you to less frequent sexual intimacy. Recognize that if you're the lower sex drive partner and that's the reason that you've become that. Recognize that and then work toward adjusting it.
Some more questions for you to consider for the low drive partner. What is it that you love about sex? So simply talking about it to your spouse, and thinking about exactly for yourself, what do you like about sex? What gets you in the mood? What turns you on? What's not happening that you need in order to get in the mood?
Yeah.
So these are going to be some really important things for you to understand so that you could convey them to your partner. And that's really where it starts, communication, because your partner can't do what you need them to do without knowing what they need to do.
Right.
So make sure you communicate it.
Yeah. So if you're the lower drive partner, ask yourself that question and even journal about it. A few other questions to ask yourself. What is causing you to shut down the conversation around sex? Because what we've seen is that when couples can safely engage in conversation about sexual intimacy, their drive is going to go up. So if you're not allowing yourself or your spouse to have even the conversation about sexual intimacy, why? Why are you shutting it down?
Right. And sometimes this is because of a values thing, or growing up, sex wasn't talked about, that's taboo. We see so many different reasons for why people don't want to talk about sex, past trauma. So bringing that conversation, the conversation is good. You need to talk about it. This is why we created Sexpectations.
Yeah.
So if you haven't already, it's a fabulous thing for you guys because it'll bring questions up in a safe place in order for you to have these conversations that might be hard otherwise to bring up just on a, hey babe, so I was thinking, it might be difficult to do it that. So doing this in a structured way might be helpful.
So now we're going to get some tips for both of you, and tips related to when it is a no, how to still get a yes out of that and both of you get your needs met. So first, to the lower drive partner, if it is a no, the way you deliver that no can make all the difference. Reassure your partner as to why. Don't just say, no, I'm not feeling it, because then you leave them to interpret that. So tell them exactly what you mean when you say no. I was working with a couple this week, and it was a no because she worked a very strenuous job. She was on her feet all day long. And so when she gets home that night, or at night typically, when he wants to have sex, it's a no for her. But if she could just say, babe, I've been on my feet all day, and I'm really feeling physically exhausted, but I want to stay connected with you. How can we stay connected tonight? That can be delivered and so much more palatable than just, no, I'm not feeling it.
Right. Sandwich technique might be really good too, is saying, man, I really want you, I really appreciate you, I love you, whatever.
Yep.
What, the good thing, and then what you really want to say, just tonight is not a good night for me because of blank, blank, blank. But maybe we can do it in the morning, or maybe we can do it after the kids go, whatever. But giving a future date or time so that person can look forward and anticipate is going to be really helpful. Instead of just saying a flat no, allow them to anticipate it. Say, maybe you can get everything ready, and like, let them put their energy or their sexual energy into preparing, and it's going to be a much better event if there's energy put into it, rather than no and then just nothing to look forward to. And it's difficult if there's no sex going on in the marriage. That opens you up for a lot of hurt and problems in the future. So being sure to give a time, kind of like a timeout, right? Giving a time to your partner, like, you can look forward to this.
So you mentioned this, and it made me think of kind of how we've conceptualized this in session often. When there's a no, find a yes. The yes might be tomorrow or later when the kids go down. It might be actually that you're saying yes to sex later, but it might not actually be a yes to sex. It could just be that it's a no right now. You're not planning sex for the future at any, tonight or tomorrow. But maybe your yes is that you want to cuddle naked in bed together.
And sometimes not just say, let's just cuddle naked and let's see where it goes. Being willing to allow it to go somewhere. You might not be feeling it right now, but if, like the nurse example, what if he gave her a foot massage and, got the lotion and whatever else and said, well, let's just cuddle and no pressure. Let's just see what happens. I just want to be close to you. And maybe it will end up that way. So maybe taking off the prerequisites of it has to end this way.
And for the higher drive partner, recognizing that it may not end up in sexual intimacy, and that's okay. In intercourse, you could still be intimate, you could still be connected and not have intercourse, but find the yes. Both of you find the yes. It could be that you guys just want to be shoulder to shoulder and read a book separately, but you're close. It could be that you want to have a
close and sensual, even. One thing, this is huge, so good for you if you're still watching this. Because Gottman did a study and said that if a no can be said about intimacy with no repercussions, then that means that the couple studied had actually more sex. So if there's always, whenever a no is said, the other person, the high drive partner, has to pout and punish the other person for saying no, which we see. Then it's that makes a difficult situation. That doesn't
make either of you more desirable when there's pouting and punishing and withdrawing and walls up. So if you could say no with no repercussions, that's going to result in more sex, because you're going to feel cared for, you're going to feel human, connected, subjects, not objects. So make sure that you're not punishing your spouse for saying no, and then make sure that you're describing your no and what it actually means.
So we would encourage you, take action on some of these items, write some of these things down, introspect, and maybe approach it differently if things aren't going the way you want them right now. Approach it differently.
And we're here for you. So reach out if you have any questions, or if you want to get some counseling around this, a session or two, or even ongoing. Let us know. We want to be here to help you and walk alongside you, because it's God's will for us to have strong marriages and for our marriage to have a strong sex life. So make sure that you're reaching out if you want to get some extra resources on board, and we'll connect.
God bless.
Bye-bye.